Yeah. So what I love about savoring, it's similar to what you were saying, is it celebrates the ordinary. So everything I mentioned about the brain at the beginning of our conversation, savoring is actually the practice that retrains our brain to celebrate and deepen those everyday moments that our brain is tempted to discard. And the way that you do this, I like to practice it in the moment. But some people like to practice it at the end of the day as a reflective exercise. I would not let the perfect get in the way of the good. However you want to practice this is great. But you just take a snapshot, like a small moment. So sometimes mine might be watching my 6-year-old son play in the backyard and just noticing the way the sun catches his blonde hair, or the weight of my 16-month-old daughter on my chest as I'm rocking her to sleep. And so just one little moment, almost like you're taking a mental photograph, and you just ask your 5 traditional senses what they're going to remember about that moment. So what do you see? What do you hear? What do you smell? What do you taste? And what do you feel? And that celebrates that moment in a way that you can actually carry it forward and recall it later. And not just, something that your brain would quickly dismiss.
I think this is so huge. So recently, whenever my husband travels, I really struggle, and I'm pretty open with that. There's attachment pain there of not being with my man for an entire 3 weeks, that type of thing. But before he left, he took me out for tacos, and we sat at outside. I mean, it was a huge parking lot, really, that we were sitting next to. It wasn't anything special, but I got to savor that moment, and the breeze that I felt, the sweetness of the mango pico that was on the shrimp tacos, the warmth in my husband's voice, and just seeing his presence across from me, and the feel of the metal table underneath my elbows as I picked up the taco. Anyways, I went through all of those senses in that moment, just knowing I would want to capture that. And then for the next 3 weeks, I was able to kind of feed on that moment again, over and over and over and over, almost every evening.
Yes.
And the truth of that sensory deepening, as well as the truth of his love, I was able to receive his love as well throughout those 3 weeks. So I cannot even tell you how important I believe this gift is. We talk in spiritual direction, especially in the Ignatian kind of school of thought, of examine. And every day, at the end of the day, kind of examining our day and receiving the gift of what the Lord was doing that day. And it seems to me like that would be a perfect, like, receiving that savoring from the day and deepening that experience. And it seems to me as well that it's like Psalm 23, the Lord setting a table in the presence of our enemies.
No, I think it's so powerful as a present practice, and then one that you can revisit, like you said. And what motivates me to do that is you and I are going to live a lot of really beautiful moments in our lives, but none of them are going to be just like this one. And so being able to savor it and see it as special, and then recall it later in the presence of our enemies, in the presence of anxiety, in the presence of loneliness, in the presence of physical disconnection, to be able to revisit that moment of, oh, I'm not alone. I am deeply loved. I belong. How much those, God created us as, with so many different senses to be able to experience his truth. And what struck me when I first started practicing this is, wow, I rely on sight a lot. That's sort of the most obvious. Whereas I had to really think about, what do I taste? Or what do I hear? What do I smell? That was less obvious to me because I don't tune in to those as often unless they're really obvious. But how those other senses really help cement that memory as special as well.
Mhm. It was clear to me that you were doing the work as
Mm,
you wrote the book, because
thanks.
you brought us right into your senses just constantly. Like, this is what the clouds looked like this day,
Yeah.
and this is what the breeze felt like that day. So I could tell the hard work that you had done
Thank you, friend.
all the way through that book, and it's a delightful read because of that, from page one
Thank
on.
you.
One of the things that I've appreciated that came up in the Soul of Desiring for Thompson's book was his inviting people to 30 seconds to 3 minutes of savoring, like
Mm,
a deep savoring, and that's how long that our brains need in order to begin to build new synapses.
mm.
A full 30 seconds to 3 minutes. And as you went through each one of those senses, seems to me that you're doing that. You're doing the 30 seconds without even trying.
Yes, if you really ask yourself, then come up with an answer, then spend, a few seconds really experiencing that. If there's 5 senses and each of them you spend about 6 seconds reflecting on and identifying, yeah, you're there. And then even better, whether you repeat it or you stay in each one a little bit longer. um 3 minutes might not sound like a long time. That's a really deep savoring experience. It's sort of like hugging someone for a minute. Doesn't sound like that long. And then you're like, well, if you really hung on to that hug for a minute, that's longer than you think. So it may not sound like a long time, but that's a pretty deep experience. But how hopeful is that? Two, that this is not something that we need any equipment for. This is not something that's going to have an impact on your time during the day. And I just love how the thing that's made the biggest difference in terms of how I experience my own life is once a day, sometimes more if I want to, but at least once a day, and 30 seconds long. And I don't need anything for it. I can do it right where I am.